Welcome, my soldiers, to my personal Clair Obscur Expedition 33 team and character guide. I've split this video into 3 sections, covering all the main story acts from 1 to 3. Later this week, I'll also be popping a guide for late game setups, which will be focused on conquering the more challenging end game content. So, kicking off with Act 1, we'll start with our favorite team setup, being Gustave in position 1, Lune in position 2, and Maelle in position 3. In the early game, we want to focus on applying as much burn as possible with this team lineup. Main reason being is burn does incredible amounts of damage at this stage of the game, and when the enemy is about to take their turn, the burn damage ticks, almost counting as an extra character to deal a bit of damage. In many cases, the burn damage will be the final tick to kill the enemy, essentially cancelling their turn and ending combat. For attributes, we'll be using a total of 45 attributes points with characters at level 15. At the end of Act 1, characters should be around level 20, so you can keep the stats spread at a similar rate throughout the act. Let's look at Gustave's setup. Gustave will generally be the one starting fights by setting up your allies with a powerful buff while building up his charges to release his very powerful finishing move, Overcharge, which will be your main break ability, as well as outputting some of the highest early game damage in a single attack. For Gustave's weapon, I suggest the Lune Setup. Main reason being is that it scales perfectly with vitality and agility, which are great stats for Gustave, who will be your main support character. For Gustave's attributes, we want to line up with the Lune Setup scaling, so we want to spread his stats between vitality and agility with a touch in might for a bit of extra damage. So in total, we're looking at 15 in vitality, 5 in might, and then 25 in agility to ensure he starts the fight to get off the powerful buff on the team. Looking at his Pictos options, I liked placing Exposing Attack, which applies defenseless on his base attack, a great debuff which empowers Lune and Maelle's hits, Energizing Break, which is great for Gustave as he will be your main breaker with his Overcharge skill, and then Rewarding Mark, which combines very nicely with the Marking Shots Pictos as he can get himself some extra AP. Additional reasoning for the above Pictos is mainly the extra speed, but also some crit and defense. Looking at Gustave's Luminous setup, we go with Versatile, Critical Burn, Augmented Counter 1, Marking Shots, Dead Energy 2, Staggering Attack, and Dodger. This setup works hand in hand with his use of free aim shots, base attacks, and increasing his break damage. For skills, we go with Lumiere Assault to build up quick charges, Overcharge, which is our big finisher and breaker in Act 1, Marking Shots, which is great for Neveron's weak to lightning, as well as applying Mark for your next teammate. Powerful is what we start almost every fight with to buff the team. From Fire, Recovery is our last skill, which is a powerful self-heal and status effect remover for Gustave. We now move on to Lune. Lune is a great burn builder and AoE attacker. She works very well with Maelle on this team as she can lay down those extra burn stacks. For Lune's weapon of choice, I suggest the Trebuchet. Main reason being is that it creates random stains on free aim shots. This opens up some great extra damage opportunities early on in the fight, as well as the ability to gain extra AP with Lune's Thermal Transfer skill. For Lune's attributes, we want to line up with the Trebuchet scaling with a slight spread into agility and might for extra speed and damage. In total, we're looking at 15 vitality, 5 might, 10 agility, and 15 luck. Looking at her Pictos options, I picked Versatile to tie in with her use of free aim shots to build early burn, SOS Shell to give her some extra survivability, and Burning Shots, which ties in with Versatile and her Thermal Transfer skill. The above also adds great speed bonuses and some extra crit and defense. For her Luminous setup, I went with Exposing Attack, which links up great with the Versatile Pictos, Marking Shots to add more utility to her free aim shots, Augmented Counter 1, Dead Energy 2, Dodger, and finally Staggering Attack to add more utility to her base attacks. Finally, let's look at her skill setup. I go with Electrify, which is a great multi-hit attack against enemies vulnerable to lightning. Immolation will be one of her most used abilities in Act 1 to build additional burn. Thermal Transfer is a fantastic spell for Lune, as she can build huge amounts of AP on her first turn after getting a burn stack via her free aim shot. Earth Rising is a great AoE skill for Act 1, and then Ice Lance is a great counter for Nevrons early in their act, as well as slowing the enemies. And finally, Healing Light is a heal for anyone in the party if you find yourself in a dangerous position. Our final member in the desired Act 1 team setup is Maelle. The Maelle setup comes in two parts, mainly due to the switch up in her weapon about 50 to 75% through Act 1. This is possibly the most important thing not to miss in Act 1, as it'll impact your entire playthrough. A bit of a spoiler ahead. When you get to the Gestural Village in Act 1, you will need to fight in the Gestural Arena to progress through the story. In the final fight of the arena, you will face off against the Stranger, who ends up being a member of Expedition 33, Maelle. When entering the final fight of the arena, make absolutely sure that you select Maelle. Reason being is that winning the final fight of the arena grants you what I believe is Maelle's best weapon throughout the entire game, Medallion. This weapon places Maelle in Virtuo's stance from turn 1, giving her massive damage from the start of the fight, and it only gets better at weapons at level 10 and 20, allowing Maelle to stack insane amounts of burn throughout Act 1, 2, and 3. The only chance you will get to get this weapon again is later on in Act 3 when you decide to take on a very, very difficult enemy. So for her first weapon of choice, we go with Brûlerum. This weapon scales fantastically with luck and agility, and builds burn on critical hits with Maelle, which will happen often considering how we set up her attributes. For Maelle's attributes, we want to line up with the luck scaling on Brûlerum. Remember, we will be resetting her attributes once we get the Medallion weapon later on in the act. So with a light spread into might and vitality for extra damage and survivability, as well as agility to get her speed up. So in total, we have 10 on might, 10 agility, and 25 in luck. Once you receive the Medallion weapon after beating CL in the Gestural Arena, we will reset her attributes and focus them as follows: 25 agility, 15 defense, and 5 luck. The agility and defense scales in line with the Medallion, so you can keep raising these at a similar rate for the remainder of Act 1 and even into Act 2. The luck remains at 5 just to give you that slight bonus to critical chance. Looking at her Pictos options, I picked Critical Burn to tie in with her high crit chance, Dead Energy 2, and Attack Lifesteal. The above also adds great speed and critical, as well as some extra vitality as we don't add any in her attributes. For her Lumina setup, I went with Energizing Start, Augmented Attack, Rewarding Mark, Energizing Break, Marking Shots, Augmented Counter, Burning Shots, and Staggering Attack. Finally, let's look at her skill setup. I go with Offensive Switch, Spark, which will be a very popular ability in Act 1 to build burn, Swift Stride, which allows you to keep Maelle in Virtuo stance after turn 1, Breaking Rules, which is crucial for removing shields on various enemies, Per Se, which does immense damage against marked enemies, and finally, Fluoret Fury, which is a fantastic damage dealer and can also break the enemy. The above team setup of Gustave, Lune, and Maelle should help you coast through the first act. Now we move on to Act 2. Just another warning, the rest of the guide does come with a major spoiler for one of the main characters in Expedition 33. Alright, looking at the Act 2 team and character setups. The major difference here is that Gustave is now swapped with Verso, who has great utility and tools to empower his teammates during each turn. Position 1 is Verso, position 2 being Lune, and position 3 Maelle. In Act 2, we continue the process of applying as much burn as possible with a few improved skills such as Maelle's Rain of Fire. For attributes, we'll be using a total of 90 attribute points with characters at level 30. At the end of Act 2, characters should be around level 35 to 40 so you can keep the stats spread at a similar rate throughout the act. Alright, let's look at Verso's setup. Verso will start the fights by building Perfection ranks with Assault 0 or Quick Strike, followed by Defiant Strike and Light Holder later on in the fight. For the weapon of choice, Verso will utilize Goltaram. This weapon scales with his attribute setup, allowing him to start the fight and set up his team. Once the weapon reaches level 10, he also gets the additional Auto Rush to keep his speed up throughout longer fights. For Verso's attributes, we'll want to spread his stats between agility and luck, with a good amount of vitality for his survivability. In total, we're looking at 20 in vitality, 40 in agility, and 30 in luck. Looking at his Pictos options, I chose SOS Power, as there is a high chance you will be at 50% HP with Defiant Strike. Sweet Kill, and then finally, First Strike to ensure he goes first in each fight. Additional reasoning for the above Pictos is the extra speed and critical strikes that it does give him. Looking at Verso's Lune Setup, we go with Augmented First Strike, Auto Rush, Breaker, Critical Burn, Dead Energy 2, Dodger, Energizing Break, Energizing Start 2, Healing Parry, and Staggering Attack. This setup works well with his speed, as well as building AP as his skills don't really help him, as well as ensuring he has strong basic attacks and survivability with healing on parries. For skills, we go with Paradigm Shift, Quick Strike, Defiant Strike, Assault Zero, Light Holder, and Perfect Recovery. Moving on to Lune, she continues to be a great burn builder and AoE attacker during Act 2. For Act 2, we switch her weapon to the Kralum. This weapon supplies great damage when using different elements, as well as giving us 2 free stains on turn start and whenever Lune starts the turn without stains. For her attributes, we fully line up with the Kralum scaling, 30 Vitality and 60 Agility. The changes in her Pictos will be the following: Energizing Start 3, Perilous Parry, and Energizing Parry. The above Pictos help Lune build a lot of AP with parries, as well as giving her a lot of added survivability, speed, and critical. For her Lune setup, I went with Augmented First Strike, Auto Rush, Burning Shots, Critical Burn, Dead Energy 2, Dodger, Energizing Jump, Energizing Start 2, Healing Parry, Marking Shots, Recovery, Staggering Attack, and Sweet Kill. For Lune's Act 2 skills, we go with Earth Rising, Mayhem, Wildfire, Ice Lance, Thunderfall, and Thermal Transfer. The final member in the desired Act 2 team setup is once again Maelle. For Maelle's weapon of choice, we start with the Medallum. This weapon scales with agility and defense. It also guarantees Virtuose Stance on turn start, which is extremely powerful. At weapon level 10, all her burn skills build double the burn, which is pretty ridiculous. For Maelle's attributes, we want to line up with the weapon scaling with a tiny bit on luck as mentioned in Act 1. So we'll be putting 50 into agility, 35 into defense, and 5 into luck. The agility and defense scales in line with the Medallum, so you can keep raising these at a similar rate for the remainder of Act 2. The luck remains at 5 as we mentioned in Act 1. Looking at her Pictos, I picked Augmented First Strike, Energizing Start 4, and Auto Rush. The above gives her great first turn damage and speed, as well as some survivability and crit rate. For her Lune setup, I went with Burning Mark, Burning Shots, Critical Burn, Dodger, Empowering Attack, Energizing Start 2, Energizing Start 3, Marking Shots, Rewarding Mark, and SOS Power. Her skill setup looks as follows: Degagement, Swift Stride, Combustion, Rain of Fire, Per Se, and Fluoret Fury. This setup leans heavily into building as much burn as possible, as well as giving the option to do some major burst damage and breaking the enemy with Per Se and Fluoret Fury. The above setup should help you clear Act 2 with not too much difficulty. When it comes to Act 3, we will be building a new team, which again reveals a new major character in the story. So just a little warning here with regards to spoilers. Alright, now we head into the final section of our team and character setup guide. Looking at Act 3, we go with the following setup. The main difference here is we bring in Monoco in place of Lune. For our positions, Monoco will start things off in position 1, followed by Verso in position 2, and then Maelle in position 3. In Act 3, we begin to rely less on burn damage and go fully into massive damage single and multi-hit skills, while using Monoco as our main support with his Potier energy skill and his multi-hitting attacks, which can also break the enemy. Let's look at Monoco's setup. Monoco will start your fights by giving the entire party up to 4 additional AP on turn 1 with the Potier energy ability, which enables your squad to hit with juicy abilities on turn 1. For the weapon of choice, Monoco will utilize Joyaro. This weapon scales with his attribute setup, allowing him to start the fight and set up his team. Once the weapon reaches level 10 and 20, he also gets the additional AP to teammates and a massive amount of additional break damage. For Monoco's attributes, we'll want to spread his stats evenly between agility and defense, 99 in agility and 81 in defense. Once you have passed level 60, you can continue to add in defense up until 99 and then begin to apply the rest to luck. Looking at his Pictos options, I chose Immaculate, Energizing Parry, and Empowering Parry. Additional reasoning for the above Pictos is the extra health, speed, and critical strikes. Looking at Monoco's Lune Setup, we go with Augmented Counter 2, Augmented First Strike, Auto Rush, Breaker, Breaking Counter, Dead Energy 2, Energizing Star 2, Exposing Attack, Full Strength, Glass Cannon, Inverted Affinity, Longer Powerful, Marking Shots, Painted Power, Rewarding Mark, SOS Power, Sweet Kill, Tainted, Teamwork, and Warming Up. This setup fully revolves around his first turn, building AP for his allies on the first and further turns, and then finally assisting with ending fights via his Portier Crash multi-hit breaker and other multi-hitting skills. For his skills, we go with Chevalier Piercing, which is great for hitting through shields, Stalact Punches to build break if needed, Potier Energy, which will be his most used ability to build AP, Sucker Patat Explosion for additional multi-hit damage, Benessure Mortar as a filler for more damage, and Portier Crash to do big multi-hit damage with the break opportunity. Moving on to Verso. Verso fills the second role as a great sub DPS and support to enable Maelle's massive damage one-shot abilities. For Act 3, we switch to his Chevalum weapon. This weapon allows Verso to start on rank S Perfection and build up his damage as the fight goes on. For his attributes, we match the weapon scaling fully, 99 agility followed by 81 luck. Max out his luck as you get further past level 60, then follow up with the additional points into might. The changes in his Pictos will be the following: Augmented Counter, Perilous Parry, and Confident Fighter. For his Luminous setup, I went with Augmented First Strike, Auto Rush, Breaking Counter, Charging Tint, Confident, Critical Burn, Dead Energy 2, Double Mark, Empowering Parry, Energizing Jump, Energizing Parry, Energizing Shots, Energizing Star 2, Glass Cannon, Inverted Affinity, Marking Shots, Painted Power, Powerful on Shell, Shell on Rush, and Solidifying. For Verso's Act 3 skills, we go with Paradigm Shift, Blitz, Defiant Strike, Follow Up, Ascending Assault, and his big multi-hit finisher, Phantom Stars. And now the final member in the desired Act 3 team setup is Maelle. For Maelle's weapon of choice, we continue with Medallum. For Maelle's attributes, we want to line up with the weapons scaling fully, 99 agility and then 81 in defense. As previously mentioned with Monoco, you can go up to 99 in defense and then put the rest into luck when leveling past 60. Looking at her Pictos options, I put Cheetah in slot 1. This synergizes perfectly with Last Chance after turn 1. Last Chance essentially maximizes your AP and puts Maelle back into Virtuo's stance, so you can do insane amounts of damage with her Stendhal ability. This ability was actually nerfed in the recent patch by 40%, but still ends up doing incredible damage. Eventually, you can reach into the billions with a single hit. I know it sounds insane, but it is true. This combo ends up trivializing the remainder of the story. The remaining Pictos we place is Glass Cannon and Inverted Affinity. For her Luminous setup, I went with Burn Affinity, Burning Shots, Critical Burn, Dead Energy 2, Dodger, Empowering Attack, Empowering Break, Empowering Parry, Energizing Parry, Energizing Star 2, Energizing Star 3, Energizing Turn, Full Strength, Greater Powerful, Healing Counter, Marking Shots, Painted Power, Rewarding Mark, Roulette, Tainted, Teamwork, Warming Up, and Weakness Gain. Her skill setup looks as follows: Last Chance, Breaking Rules, Momentum Strike, Stendhal, Payback, and Sword Ballet. This setup puts a huge emphasis on the Stendhal ability to decimate pretty much any boss in the final act. As mentioned, I'll put together a final build video very soon to specifically tackle the endgame side bosses, which are immensely more powerful than the final Act 3 story bosses. If you found this setup guide useful, please feel free to drop the video a like and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all the support. I'd also love to hear what suggestions you may have to improve my Act 1 to 3 setups, especially if you found joy in utilizing different characters. See you in the next one.